Hi, my name is Jess, and my favorite thing is children's books.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome back to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones. It's Sunday, July 25th. Last week, I had a nice long chat with Jess Crafting. She is known on the internet as Reading with E and was the co-host with her husband of the podcast, How Have You Never, a pop culture podcast. And we are talking about children's and YA book recommendations. We go through her haul from the library that day. We talk about what's new in fantasy and chapter books and teaching your kids about social justice. This was a very long interview. The original interview was an hour and 45 minutes. So I took out some tangents. Jess is also from the Discord. She's from the Doughboys fan community, as are the next, at least the next, a couple more interviews coming up as we continue our tour of this fan community that I'm really enjoying. Talking to people who are fans of Doughboys about things that aren't the Doughboys. Last night, my friend Jocelyn came by to watch some bad TV, and I think we are going to bring you Candy Chat a little bit more regularly. It'll be on a different feed, and I think you listened to a backdoor pilot on our Candy episode. I've had more feedback on that than almost any episode I've had. Anyone I've interviewed so far, because everyone has an opinion about candy. So look for Candy Chat to come your way maybe in the fall as we figure out is there going to be a structure? How is it going to work? How heavy editing are we going to do? Other than that, things here, I just have continued down the wonderful world of testing, talking to doctors at a couple different hospitals, had an MRI, biopsy, genetic test, and this week I have a bone scan, and after the bone scan I should be ready to schedule my first surgery, unless the bone scan comes back with more information that is also scarier than just what I'm currently dealing with. But for now, the podcast will continue. I've got a full deck of interviews coming up. This week I went back downtown to my office for the first time, which was very exciting. I really enjoyed being back downtown, and I'm looking forward to the change of pace, even though I'm kind of afraid that with the Delta variant on the rise, we're headed towards another shutdown. So I'm a little worried we won't ever get back to the office in September. And I am someone who needs a little bit of movement in my day, going around the city. So I'm hopeful that we'll be going back and that things will get wrestled under control. So tell your loved ones to get that vaccine if they haven't yet. Help them with childcare or transportation or whatever it's going to take to get them the vaccine. And, stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and keep making time for your favorite things. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. Tonight, I am joined by Jess Crafting. Jess is on TikTok and Instagram, where she's got an account called Reading with E, all about making recommendations of kids' books and giving feedback as a parent, like what's good, what's bad, what should you pick up, what should you get out of the library. Jess is also a continuation of my trip through the dose cord. I think July and August are going to be all about interviewing fans of the Doughboys about things that are not the Doughboys. So Jess, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks. I know it's like it's a wide field apparently of people you can pull from. We've learned.
Yeah, I interviewed Beth this week about true crime podcasts, so she'll be on this week. I've got Blake is going to come on and talk about the mountain goats.
Wait, what? Okay. I didn't know he had like I feel like neither of them I have heard that interest from. I guess they wouldn't have heard my interest either, which is funny because we talk about so much stuff, but yet I don't think I knew that Beth liked true crime. And I know Blake is actually an author. So I feel like I would have thought he was going to talk about an author or a favorite book. He's really literary, but yet he's going to talk about, I mean, it's a different type of art. And also,
yeah, I suppose he can also reserve the right to change his mind by the time we actually do the interview. But we met when I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and he started going down a path on the mountain goats. And I was like, save that for my podcast. Also, do you want to come be on my podcast?
I know, it's not funny. My husband and I had, we started up our podcast before quarantine. Yeah, it was November. So it was a very weird time capsule of like Trump finally being out of office and then he's still in office, being not elected again, into the pandemic with this podcast we were doing on like I guess I've never seen apparently most media that most people have seen. And so it was called like How Have You Never? You can look it up if you want, but we're currently on a extended hiatus. Who knows if we'll come back. But I feel like it's like we would talk about something. It was just me and my husband. So we would talk about something in person. I'd be like, wait, we got to talk about it on the podcast. And he was like, are we never going to have a conversation again? Because we can only talk about media on the podcast. And I was like, oh, I guess that's not fair. But like, I don't really want to rehash it again. So we'll have to find some new information. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing about having guests is that you can add a new non-household point of view to the rehashing.
Definitely. Which at first we had at least like one or two or three in-person guests, and then the pandemic hit, and then nobody knew what we could do when, and so we had some people on Zoom, but I feel like at some point people were zoomed out, and so we just kind of ended up doing it mostly ourselves. And it was also a really hard when you have a kid and work, like I work in healthcare. So I was out of the house a lot of days still. And my husband was doing remote school with our son. Oof. And you know what? November 2019. I was about to say it was more than a year. Yeah. So November 2019. So that wasn't the election year.
It was leading up. I feel like November 2019. Did we know it was going to be that Biden was going to be the candidate yet? Not until the spring.
Yeah. So now that I said that, I feel like, yeah, it was mostly us like being depressed for the whole thing. Right. Like, oh my God, like it was just thing after thing kept happening. Yeah. So I felt that was a bad, now that I'm thinking about it, it was not the election year. I was like, that seemed more hopeful than I remember it being.
You know, that meme that went around that was like, just kind of like November 2019, December, and it got to March, and then it did a loop-de-loop and came out March of 21, and it was just like this year didn't happen.
Yeah, we're just ignoring
that's what you're experiencing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, so our kid was in remote kindergarten, which was fun.
Yeah.
I was out of the house, and we just had like so few hours anyway with a kid, but like with all this other stuff, trying to like plan the next day, whatever, to then watch a 3-hour movie in time to report the podcast, or to have any backup. We just never we never could get any in the can, right? Like never get any finished. So, or like we did Star Trek, which one was it? Not one of them, Deep Space Nine. I don't remember. We watched we picked out like 4 episodes, but they're hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
So it was 4 hours of a commitment of that. And we usually did like a pre and a post show. So it was just a lot of time. So if we might have to rethink the format if we continue ever. But
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like
it's
those,
tricky.
I think it's so hard of like how much of your like waking marriage time when the kid is asleep do you want to spend doing your podcast?
Yeah, like at first we were like, this is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way for us to not just sit on the couch and look at our phones next to each other, but not
Uh-huh.
actually interacting at all, where we would be talking to each other face to face, like with a microphone, but like face
Yeah.
to face. Or we'd be watching something where we kind of be talking to each other about it a little bit because, we're trying to trigger each other, think cool things
Right.
to think about for the podcast. But also, yeah, then it a little bit started to feel like work, right? Like, oh, I don't really want to watch this, but we have to.
Mm-hmm.
So that also was a bummer, especially with stuff that like maybe we would have wanted to watch. But it definitely did get us to watch. I'm very much the person who has to be like in a mood to watch
Mm-hmm.
something, and I'm often not in a
Yes.
mood.
Yeah.
so,
What
like I
were
wouldn't
some
watch
of
it.
the things that, because I don't think Star Trek Voyager or whatever you just said, I can't even remember already.
I can't remember what it was, so it doesn't matter.
I think that is not a shocking one to have not seen. So
I
like I
haven't
kind
seen
of,
any.
oh, you hadn't seen any Star Trek.
Right. I'd only seen like touches here and there. And so we
Yeah.
picked one that like we knew is known, and apparently was known in the community as being like a really good one to watch
Yes.
to
Yeah.
give us the best chance of like enjoying it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, which we've talked about before.
Yes.
I was diagnosed, I don't know, a couple years ago. I'm gonna be 37 soon, and I think I was probably like 33 maybe when I was
Okay.
diagnosed. So it's been a lot of like, oh, that's an ADHD thing. I never knew, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of people are having those moments now that there's ADHD TikTok and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff. That or we're all just have terrible executive functioning. Like every single
Yeah.
person our age has terrible executive functioning. Which either way still could use some help. So
Yeah. I would still like things, whether or not it's ADHD, dear psychiatrist with whom I may not meet again, like whether or not it's ADHD, I still need help. Like,
right.
I still need interventions, ideas, things to do. Because he was like, well, maybe it was just COVID. And I'm like, well, no,
Okay.
So when it comes to watching TV and ADHD, has having some interventions or having the diagnosis made it easier for you to like sit down and watch shows?
That's a good question. I take medication and it is definitely worn off by TV time.
Okay,
So
yeah.
usually not. So this is all related to kind of to what the struggle was I was going through with coming up with something to talk about
Mm-hmm.
with you, because I like everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard that from a lot of other ADHD people, that you just end up with a lot of people end up with like so many interests or so many hyper focused things. So like a lot of mine often have to do with, so my therapist pointed out to me, a lot of creativity things, which is funny
Yeah.
because I would never be like, if someone was like, oh, describe your husband, I'd be like, he's creative, he's a musician. And like if they said describe myself, I would never use the word creative. But like all
Mm-hmm.
my quote interests are like, I got super into painting. I can't paint. I don't know. I just was like, I bought, an easel, like a small
Yeah.
easel, all the paint brushes, the acrylics, the swirly stuff that I don't even know the name of, and then I got super into that for like a month or two. And then like I found, I don't know, what was it? Maybe embroidery. And then I
Mm-hmm.
like did some cool embroidery stuff. And then I bought all the, so I have
Yeah.
between that, drawing, painting, embroidery, I got a Cricut, which is like a cutting machine
Mm-hmm.
thing, and making earrings, scrapbooking like 10 years ago, still have all that stuff. I like, and plus a pack rat like attitude. We have so much crafting stuff in this house. My poor husband, he's like, are you going to use it again? What do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. I might. I might come around on it again. So yeah, so I have just so many things, and I still wouldn't say, like, even if I'm not painting right now, I wouldn't say it's not of interest to me or what, you know what I mean?
It's
So
just
there's
not
so
a
many.
current interest.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I feel like that happens with shows, that happens with books, that like I will get into what dietitians actually, I don't know if this word exists otherwise, but call kids, especially like 4 or 3-year-olds, toddlers, get into food jags, where they like, so it's like JAG. I was like, I don't know if anybody uses that word in this way, but like a food jag is like where they'll only eat chicken nuggets. Like every meal, you cannot give them something else. So they were screaming, like that kind of thing. So I feel like I'll get into like a reading jag where like I'll stay up all night to read like 2 books, finish, and then like I finish like 6 books in a week, and then I won't read again for 5 months or whatever. You know what I mean? It's such a weird, I cannot stay like balanced. I can't stay balanced. So it happens with TV shows too. So we have a lot of started TV shows also.
All right.
But that's probably why I haven't seen a lot of movies either. Like we ended up starting that podcast because like, though annoyingly I had seen The Godfather before, but I hadn't seen stuff like The Godfather or like traditionally.
How do you like Shawshank
stuff? Right. Right.
Which
Wait, I told you that one? Yeah.
I think you mentioned it. But I think they must have done an episode of Blank Check on it. And it was just so incredibly on TV. But I'm 44, so I'm a little bit older than you. So I might have, like, my high school years might have been peak Shawshank Redemption time. I mean, it was pandemic kindergarten, so is now first grade, or is now pandemic kindergarten first grade?
It's first grade. Aww. I know. And he's going to have to go back because unless something crazy changes, the school board is like, no more remote the end. So it's either homeschool or, they go back. So
yeah,
hopefully it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so first grade. He was bored out of his mind in kindergarten. I feel really bad because I don't know when, there was a period of time where he like just all of a sudden, we were like, he would say like, no parking, and like be reading the sign as we were driving past. And we were like, how'd you know it said no parking? Like, I'm pretty sure that's a sign I wouldn't have read out loud. Right. And he was like 3. And I was like, how did you know that said no parking? But he couldn't answer. He's 3, so he like can't answer that question. He doesn't really like, I don't know what you mean. I just know what it says. And so we were like, oh, is he like memorizing stuff from books? Like just like a picture to the brain. And then at the time he was in a preschool that was a Montessori, which if people don't know, it's like one of the main tenets is, the child-driven, child-led activities. So they have all these, they call them work, which I really hated.
I've heard some criticisms of a lot of my friends go to Montessori schools here. Like a lot of them use it because it's very hands-on. There's a lot of activities. It's very much like learn by doing. But the idea that the kids always have work to do is a little industrialization, become a good office worker weirdness.
Yes. Considering my husband, I'm pretty like anti-capitalist here. The name work, though it really isn't quote work for them. I don't know why, whatever her name was, Magdalena Montessori, whatever her name was, came up with work. Why that was the phrase for her like 1930 brain, who knows. But so it's basically just like a fun little activity you'll take and then you complete it. Or if you're done, either way, you need to clean up the whole thing and put it back before you move on to something else, right? So but you can choose whatever you want. So there was practical life, which is like you could take out like a pitcher to pour water, whatever. Never had an interest in that. And then like math, and then like a languagey type one, and then there was a fourth one that I'm blanking on. And he would just always choose the reading-ish one and the math one over and over. And like the teachers do, you know, kind of introduce you to other ones. So like it's not just you necessarily choosing everything. They also give you a little taste of the other stuff. But I remember by the end of like when he was like 3.5, she was like, he's reading this stuff, and would like send home little packets of, you know, like 3-word type, like, you know, Dick sees Jane sees Spot, whatever, you know, like whatever those things were. And we were like, okay, wow, this is, I'm not like pressuring him to read. We don't have any, you need to be academic at like kindergarten, you know what I mean? Like I had no worries. We were like, okay, this is what you like to do. Let's let you do it. And you know, we like to read too. I mean, when I'm in my reading jag, right? But you know, we like to read, and so we just kept kind of reading with him. And then by the time, I feel like he must have been like 4, he was reading pretty well. And then by the time kindergarten, he's reading like chapter books. And so then we went to kindergarten, and they're introducing letters, and I felt so bad. I was like, he was like, this is so, like, I don't know if he used the word boring, because I feel like I try not to use the word boring too much around him, because I don't want him to be like, I'm bored, and whine at me.
That's a hard one, because it's like he's not in the room where there's lots of, I'm sure you have lots of toys and things for him to do, but like if they're introducing letters and they realize that he can read, oh, what a cutie.
This one's Peach.
Hi, Peach. Because if a kid is an advanced reader and is in the room, the aide can, like, there might be a couple kids and they can go to a different corner and read their chapter books or do silent reading or be redirected.
Yeah, and I did tell the teacher up front, and she was really great. I loved her so much. I wish we could have her like every year for the rest of his life. Like, you know how to teach high school, right? Let's just move on up.
Yeah.
But I gave her a heads up. But she, like, I also knew, like, she couldn't, like you said, do too much, like to change the situation. So they had breakout like reading groups, and there was this other little girl who could read, so she had them be in a group together, and they would do like a read aloud thing, and then she had them do presentations where they like picked a topic they were interested in, they can go read about it and then make this like literally a PowerPoint presentation. Like they would just tell her facts and like, what color do you want, pink or green? And she would like put it in. I know, it was very cute. So yeah, like his first one, she was like, what are you interested in? We thought he was going to say like, what was he in at that point? Like he was super into the ocean stuff and like space and whatever. And he was like, parrots. Like, what? Parrots. And we're like, all right, man, go for it. Go
do some research.
Parrots. Yeah. Knows lots about parrots now.
Oh, but yeah, that's fun. Well, I don't want this to purely be a COVID rant, but I could honestly just talk about like trying to live in COVID and make future plans and travel plans. I could happily talk about that all night.
I know. I feel like that's all everybody talks about.
Yeah. We'll talk about it at the casino in February.
With a couple. Yeah.
With our Pizzeria Regina pizza. And whatever else we're supposed to eat while we're out there.
I know, we'll see.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
But Jess, what is the thing you love or the current favorite thing that we're going to talk about tonight?
So I love, and I think I would still love this even without my child, children's books. Absolutely. From not the board books, no offense to the board books, but they're like those, like the thick ones that like have 3 words on each page, maybe. But like picture books to middle grade books, YA, but like I really do love
kids books.
Yeah.
Nice. So our apologies to Sandra Boynton.
You know what? Sandra Boynton books are very good. She has more than 3 words on her board book pages. I do love hers. I think I have half of them memorized because they were a favorite in our household for sure. But like not like I mean, I guess like the where it's just like a picture of a yellow duck and it says duck, you know, like not those. The story ones, yes. Yeah.
Is Sandra Boynton is she Llama Llama Red Pajama?
No. Oh God. I feel so bad. I can't remember her name because she died and she's young, like young.
Yes.
Oh, I'll have to look it up. Sandra Boynton is the of course I love children's books and I'm not gonna be able to pull a single name now. This is actually exactly like if you listened
Anna
to Jocelyn's
Dewdney.
episode. Yes, that's
Anna Dewdney. Yeah.
If your listeners heard Jocelyn's episode, she said this is I was like, yes, that's exactly what I have. I don't know if it's an ADHD brain thing that, you know, you're like, I love this thing. And then you just completely blank on anything that has ever occurred to you about that. Yes. So I like just now completely blanked on any Sandra Boynton books, but she has the Barnyard Dance and like, oh, Moo Ba La La La, which was a favorite in our household. Yes. I feel like if someone started reading that out loud, I would be able to finish it because we read it so many times. Yeah. That's a little bit of a theme. And I mean, most children, but of the repetition and reading something over and over again, which at the beginning is okay. And then the middle, I feel like someone is just pulling my fingernails off. And then at the end, I no longer am technically reading because I'm also thinking, but apparently my mouth is moving with the words and saying the words out loud. Like I do not even, it's just so ingrained. I can think while I read it out loud.
Wow.
So yeah, so there's like a middle ground there, but it's so frustrating now too that it's not frustrating. I very much appreciate that my kid is reading on his own and loves to read. But there's a combo of I've been bringing home books to like read for myself now because he'll be like, no, I want to read this other thing. And I'm like, all right, I guess so. But there's this really cool book that like, you know, like called like Sugar and Milk or something that was about like oh God, now I'm gonna butcher it. Like I think it was an Indian like folk tale and it had these beautiful pages and it was still an interesting story. It just didn't care because I picked it out and it wasn't like this funny graphic novel action thing that he's been into recently. And I was like, please just let me read it to you. And so there's a combo of that or like I'll bring home a chapter book that I'm like, oh, let's read this together. And he's excited. And then I disappear to like do dishes or something. And he's like almost done with it. And I come back, I'm like, you read it without me? He's like, yep, I read it without you. Sorry. But yeah.
So for you, was it, because you just said you think that even without E in the house, you would still be picking up these books to read. So when as an adult did you key in that this was a type of this was like a reading that felt good to you, that you wanted in your life, that you wanted to like explore and find new things to read?
Yeah, I feel like even it was almost before that when I was I was a kid, but an older kid who wouldn't normally want to read picture books, right? So when I was 14, I asked to work at the library as like a job to get paid. That was my first job. Awesome. I worked there till I was 18. Nerd. I wish I still worked there.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot, just like stocking shelves is so relaxing to me. Yes. I can still mostly find stuff Dewey Decimal wise too. It's getting a little rusty now. But I would always find myself most wanting to stock the kids section. And then I would kind of like disappear for a little bit and read some. And I loved like kind of, I don't want to say flipping because it's that like connotes pages, but like when picture books are kind of vertically stacked and you can kind of like pull them aside to each other. Do you know what I mean?
It's kind of like if you're Like when you're looking at
Records.
records, posters at Spencer's, like anywhere they're kind of in a bin and you can like a Rolodex, flip through them and see the covers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to do that with picture books. And I think some of it started off with nostalgia. Like I know a lot of people are, but I feel like nostalgia really hits hard for me, where I can like really feel myself in that place and like the emotions I had then.
Mm-hmm.
Or my brain made up emotions about how happy I was and then just, whatever. So like I really loved looking through theirs and being like, oh my God, I loved this book, like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Like I remember reading that, and I would pull it out and I would read it while I was supposed to be stocking it or whatever, They didn't care. The librarians are very chill. But then it kind of morphed into, I feel like in college I probably was kind of away from it.
Sure.
But I always loved YA books too, even through college. And I feel like that was a little bit of a like, I need to hide that I like YA because like I should be reading, I literally can't exactly. Yeah, I know. I was like, I literally can't think of a fiction book I should be reading because I don't read them that much.
Right. Like Moby Dick or like Emily Bronte
yes.
book or something.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you should be reading something heady.
Exactly. Yeah. And I went to a liberal arts school, and like I was a science major, but we obviously had to take like comparative literature and whatever. So I feel like I like kept my little secret Tamora Pierce Song of the Lioness fantasy YA book under my bed to be like, this isn't mine. But then when I was older and more confident in my own interests, I guess, where I didn't have to feel that weird young adult peer pressure of like what you're supposed to like and not supposed to like thing. I just like kind of fell hard into YA books. And then I wonder if it was my friend had a kid 5 years before I had mine.
Okay.
Her kid is 5 years older than mine. And I would go, she's also a reader. She had her master's in English. And so I would go pick out books for her kid, like to give him as a gift. And I was like, these books, these are cooler than I remember even picture books being like, these are way more interesting.
So much better.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like it's really funny now to see parents, and I pretty much don't, I would say 99% of the books I will read to him are not something I had as a kid, because 99% of those are like racist and they just like super sexist and terrible. So it's funny to hear a lot of parents around me be like, oh yeah, I was reading them, this like Babar book, and I was kind of surprised. I was like, really, you're surprised that Babar, the like white elephant, but who's supposed to be like not white, is super insulting. I was just, it's just shocking like that people are still surprised that the 80s books are not,
didn't age well.
I don't know, but
there was that. I mean, a book I feel like we read all the time was about the like 5 Chinese brothers.
Oh, yep. I know that one.
I don't believe that it's in print anymore.
I don't think so.
I can't imagine.
I feel like I came across it at the library though, or like a library browse sale, like where they were selling the books from the library. Yeah. I think I came across it and quickly like tried to hide it beneath other books. Like, nobody take this, please. Or like I remember loving, and I have a feeling it was both because of the rhyme and some of the pictures, but the Mulberry Lane one, whichever one was, it was the Dr. Seuss one that has like the Chinaman in it.
Right.
I remember liking the style of how it was like one person and then they keep adding to it. I don't think I probably noticed, because I was white and grew up around a lot of white kids. I didn't notice that they were being racist in the middle of the book, which is terrible. But I remember liking that book and then looking back at it as like a 30-year-old, probably when I was looking for it for my friend's kid. I was like, oh no, no, we're not getting this one. This is not okay. So I've just given up on like any picture book nostalgia pretty much. I'm a little worried to even look at like any middle grade type, which is now up and coming, which I think is cool. I feel like I remember how big my section was at the library, and it was a decent size, but I feel like most of it was like Nancy Drew and like Bobbsey Twins.
Nancy Drew, Bobbsey Twins, the Hardy Boys.
Yep.
And
Babysitter
Judy
Club.
Blume.
Yep.
And right.
That was my, I know. Yeah. I loved the babies. I was obsessed with the Babysitter's Club.
Nice.
I reread them so many times. I still have them in boxes upstairs. Those which will never.
I somehow just, I just missed it. I don't know.
Some people did.
It was for me, Babysitter, and I think I said this on my interview with Carolyn.
Yes, I was upset she didn't read the Babysitter Club.
Yeah, that I think in my head it was like Babysitter's Club equaled people who could buy Guess jeans equaled 90210, and like I wasn't that person. I wasn't somebody who could buy Guess jeans, and so like I didn't read the Babysitter's Club.
Oh, that's so interesting. I never thought like that. It's funny because I was also not that person. We didn't like, I didn't even watch 90210, but like I didn't have any expensive clothes or whatever, but I grew up in New York near Connecticut. Okay. So to me, now looking back on it, I didn't realize then that Connecticut had like a reputation of being like a rich area as like a little kid, like a, fourth grader or whatever. Sure. But now I understand that. But like to me, it was like, oh, they're near me. Like the idea is that they're near me. That's cool. And I very much identified with this character who wanted to be a writer. I really wanted. I wanted to want to be like I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't have like any of the chops to be a writer. So I feel like I associated with that. But yeah, so I feel like the middle grade boom is really happening, maybe because of Rick Riordan, who wrote Percy Jackson and The Lightning Thief. So he wrote those, and that got big and got movies and stuff. And I feel like that was,
and it had a musical.
Oh wow, really?
Didn't it? I think so.
I'm out of the musical game.
Jonathan was in the cast.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you are most likely right. I am out of the musical game mostly. Like I don't know.
Okay, yes, anything. It was on Broadway.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean that's a cool one. In this, I feel like a lot of people poo-pooed it because, like a lot of people do for fantasy books in general, that they're like lesser than books for some reason, even though you literally had to make up an entire world that makes sense in addition to a story. So why is that less? I don't know. But he wrote, have you read them before? I
haven't.
So
but spoil away. It's okay.
You learned it early that the main character is a demigod. He's half human, half god. And if you're half human, half god, you have special powers, right? And that the reason all of the demigods are dyslexic because they like can't see the words a certain way. That's part of their power, kind of. So it gives his kid was dyslexic, so he gave his kid this power to like envision himself as a god, a hero kind of thing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So like I feel like he did that, and then he must have made so much money off of that he has now. Sure. I don't know. I don't want to say it's not a production company. What is it?
Publishing house?
Well, I don't know if it's a publishing house because the books say Rick Riordan Presents on it. I actually don't know if it's
interesting.
If it's just like a stamp or if it's like a company. Yeah, I have never even looked it up. But
so he's not the author. He is like putting like Oprah's book club.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess just like kind of a stamp on it. But he anything that has that on it, he specifically decided to try to bring people of color and women of color to the forefront as much as he could in these middle grade books.
Mm-hmm.
And so people know his name. So he puts it on those books to try to draw more attention to them and get more people to buy them. And I think it's worked because I've seen a lot of those books like front and center in the bookstore and front and center in the library. And I've read a couple of them. They're really great. Like they all different authors that like not just the same however many authors. I've seen like 5 different authors at least.
Yeah. It's I just looked it up. So it's a new imprint from Rick Riordan highlighting cultures and mythologies from around the world. These covers are amazing.
Yes. Oh my God, the cover.
I want to read every single one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the one, something Shah. I will look it up.
Aru Shah and the three and the Tree of Wishes.
Did I read that one?
There might be.
I've read so many now. I feel like I've read so many now. I'm trying to remember what.
There's the City of Gold. He's got a lot.
Well, these also the crafted novels. The City of Gold.
And the Song of Death.
So Song of Death. That's the one I've read, I believe.
And the End of Time. There's 4 Aru Shah.
Yeah.
Books.
And maybe did I read one out of order? I feel like there was one I read out of order and I was a little confused at the beginning. But yeah, no, I read Sal and Gabby. I just closed it. Hang on. Sal and Gabby Break the Universe. I read that one. That was pretty good. That one is more that takes, I mean, they all kind of take place, I think, in this world. Just like that. So does his book. They take place in this world, but then like kind of a twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so like that was a recent, within the last like 5 years, I want to say, or so. And I really have seen, just from me looking myself, like kind of a surge of middle grade, which is kind of like, I want to say like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th ish.
Okay.
So it's not YA and it's not picture books. And it's not like early chapter books. It's like a little easier than YA, a little less sexual content usually, right? Like usually the kids are kind of like middle school age. But the writing is, yes, but the writing is usually the thing. I mean, maybe it's just the books I'm picking. I don't know. But like, it's still good stories. It is not dumbed. I mean, sometimes I can guess. Sure, I can guess maybe but I can do that in adult books too. Guess the thing coming up, like who killed this person or whatever's happening. And the people are just really, the authors are, I feel like, finally given a voice to really, do like full novels, but just for a slightly younger audience. It's not any lesser of a book, So I think I'm hoping, right, that it'll get so many kids interested in reading. I think people have tapped into that. Kids like, usually the books are either some sort of mystery or a fantasy book. I feel like usually, and that's what kids like on
you want an
TV shows and like movies.
Yeah,
exactly. Like you want to escape it. Like there are definitely some like middle grade books that are, slice of life style, but I feel like maybe popular since kind of Harry Potter and then Percy Jackson and then Hunger Games. We've had kind of like even for the littler kids, like a fantasy resurgence.
Yeah.
Or maybe just surgence, because there's been no I don't know when the previous fantasy time would have been.
The Witch in the World. Lion, the Witch in the Wardrobe was definitely fantasy. Yes. I mean, it was also Christian allegory, which I did not know until I was an adult.
I know. Now I'm like, wow, how did I miss that? Aslan was dying on a stone. Like, just did not catch it.
I went to basic...
CCD. I did. I went to CCD, which is like Catholic, like weekly Catholic. Then
you should have caught on to some of the.
I was too
Christian
interested in the
stuff,
fantasy stuff.
Yeah, I think that was, and I mean, The Wizard of Oz was so many books.
That's
like
true.
It wasn't just. Because we had a few of the Wizard of Oz. We had the C.S. Lewis, Madeleine L'Engle.
Oh yes,
A Wrinkle in Time.
I love The Wrinkle in Time.
My twin sister was always a stronger reader than me, Not always, but she read like, she started reading Les Mis when we were in 5th grade.
Oh, wow. That's a big book.
It's a big book. I don't know if she finished it.
I owned it.
Yeah.
I think I read one page. I don't think I ever opened it after that.
I'm the only person in my family that couldn't finish Infinite Jest. Like everyone else read it, and I thought like only my dad had finished it, and then we were at a dinner a couple years ago, and I was like, wait, everyone read it, and I just had it on, like, I was on page 200 for 5 years.
Whoops. Did you have to restart? Or did you just give up?
I never finished it. Eventually I just put it in the alley. I just had to abandon all hope. I just was like,
literally.
Yeah.
Abandon it.
But I wasn't trying to read it in middle school.
Right.
For me, the book that, like, because I was a solid reader, but I wasn't a reader until I won the book Stuart Little in some sort of competition in 3rd grade. That was the prize.
That's awesome.
And my sister read it before me.
How could she?
Or she threatened to read it before me. And I was like, no,
difference.
I'm a reader too. And that was like the little spark of competition I needed to become someone who could get like hyper focused on books. And from like that point, 3rd grade until like well into using Twitter, I was still able to like read books.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like there's some sort of weird adult brain thing of like, there are too many, like, you know, when I'm sitting in my house, I can see that thing. I should fold that laundry.
Yeah.
Like, I know the dishes need to be done. Like, there's 800 shows I know, like my friends are going to talk about tomorrow at work, you know, before pandemic, but like my friends are going to talk about at work and I should be watching those. And yeah, there's so much media to consume that we end up getting, like, being able to sit down and shut off your brain for a little bit. Because I feel like with TV, unless it's like a super intense show, you can kind of zone in and out sometimes. Yeah. Whereas a book, you can't. I mean, I do. It's bad. And then I'm like, I have to read that whole page again. Yeah. But yeah, you can't. Like, you will just miss it. So I feel like that's a little bit to why I'm drawn to write to kids' books in general, is that they're quick, they're easy, they're like bite size, you know, but some of the, like, especially I just read like 2 middle grade books that were cute that I was like, this was fine, but it only took me like half an hour.
Right.
You know? So I was like, I don't know if I want to share this one with my kid. I don't even know if I want to put it on the Instagram, because it's like, it was fine. It was like pretty middle of the road. Not neither like, ooh, stay away from, or yes, definitely get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was like done. Then it was done. It was great. You know, it was quick. I like check it off my list.
Yeah. You read a book. You read 2 books in one day. Done.
I know. Exactly. Yeah. But I feel like there is a huge push now to, I think it's probably related to like people our age, either right, or like the age of being authors or have had kids and want to be authors because they didn't find any of these books that they wanted, or like their kids are, you know, 13 or something, and like they didn't have the books that they would have wanted to teach their kids about anti-racism and gender equality, or, you know, I just our library, I love one of our library, I mean, both our librarians are very nice, but I love one knows my like taste too, and she'll like hand me books as I come in, but she was definitely the one who put out the Pride Month like section. And you know, there were books like there's one we have, and I'm gonna have to look up the name because I'm blanking on it, that talks about you know, gender fluidity, and it kind of like talks through like meeting a trans kid, and then there's someone else who's non-binary, and it's like in a nice simple tone for kids. And when we read that to our son, he was like, yeah, okay, I got it. And then when we told him, my husband's sister's kid came out to us as non-binary with they them pronouns, and we told our kid that his cousin was no longer going to be that name. They were now going to be Ash. We were like, he was like, all right, so I call them Ash and use they. And we're like, He's like, okay. And like moved on, like immediately was just totally fine. Like, yep, okay. Like it was easy. Like there was no, which makes me be like, come on, like adults, like who don't get it. Like 5-year-olds getting it.
Yep.
You have a brain lesser than a 5-year-old. Is that what you're telling me? Like that you can't understand it?
I have neural pathways more deeply carved in on certain people. Yeah, I do. One of my nibblings is non-binary, and their partner.
I heard you say nibblings, so that's why I was like, I wonder if
And they and their partner both use they them, and I do get tripped up trying to talk about two people in a partnership who both use they them.
I can see that,
and I'm like, oh, but that's what names are for,
right? Yeah.
if I can't figure out which pronoun, use a name. It works.
Exactly. Yeah.
It works great.
Yeah. It's not. And I was reading something recently about, and I do want to be better about this, that to not, and this is for both, anytime you use a wrong pronoun, but also saying something that like someone would need to do someone who's already oppressed would need to do emotional labor for you. Just as like, if they correct you, just say thanks. And then refit and then fix it and move on, as opposed to being like sorry, because then they have to be like it's okay when it's not okay, even if you don't want them to say it's okay. If it's like even banged my mic. It's a reflex, I would say, for me to say sorry, so I have to like concentrate on being like thank you, correct, move on, because it's not their job to do any more emotional labor than they've already had to do. So
I think that's honestly, it's one of the things that TikTok has really figured out about me is this is like, Leah is someone who is like wants to be like a good aunt and like a good ally, and it gives me the videos that do a lot of that emotional labor and teaching and education in like little 1 minute, 2 minute snippets.
Yes.
That I find really useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I found the name of the book. It Feels Good to Be Yourself, a book about gender identity.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's like, I just typed in, I couldn't remember literally what it was called. So I typed in gender equality picture books, and there's like a million now, you know what I mean? Like, Except When They Don't, Pink is for Boys. And
Spidey. Spidey. So you did that Google search, and then it's not just one book that comes up now.
Right. It's so many. And like when I went to, and I feel like I do a ton of, like, I'll think of a topic like, ooh, I need to talk to my kid more about this topic. And then I search it, and there are like a list of some of the book, and it's 20 books about non-binary, or like, what was it about? It was about, he wanted to wear a dress when he was 3.
Yeah.
Right. There were like 30 books about anywhere from like trans to just like, quote, I don't want to say like being different, but like wearing, it was literally about like wearing a dress as a boy in school, to try to like, let's not all think that all girls can only wear dresses. Like, girls wear shorts. So like, why can't boys wear dresses, kind of thing.
Right.
And there's just so much representation coming up. I don't want to say there's representation now, because there is not. It's still not great. But there's some number I saw somewhere, and I don't have the exact numbers on it, but it was something like before 2010 or something like that. 85% of the books of children's picture books had a boy main character or animals.
Oh.
Yes, the animal contingency makes a strong showing. and then it was like 10% were girls, and then like white boys and white girls.
Yeah.
And then like whatever the left 5% or whatever was like people of color.
Yeah.
And then now it's more like 70 to, you know what I mean? Like it's still not great, but it was improving at least. You know, it's still a weird combination, I'm sure, of oh my God, a supply and demand. You know, like how many parents want those books so that they'll actually go hire, you know, the authors who are not white men to make books,
to write the
or
books.
White women. It's probably mostly like white women making books. But I always check, especially with books about indigenous cultures and tribes, that the author's indigenous, because it really bothers me when the author's white. It really I just they're not getting the money that you're writing about, like their culture, and they're not getting any of the money unless you donate every single cent that you ever make off this book to the tribe you're writing about. Like, don't write about the tribe, please. But I have found like a lot of books. There was one I took out. It's sitting over there. I should just put the pile of books I have next to me so I could have seen the titles. But I could go get
your
them,
opera glasses.
I know, really. Oh my God. On that Pride shelf, they had When Aiden Became a Brother and Plenty of Hugs, both which I'd never seen. And I specifically like what I was saying before is I like Google lists all the time. I should talk to him more about like parents who aren't just quote mom and a dad and, you know, a heterosexual couple.
Like the different types of grown-ups that kids can live with.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I like saying like, where are your grown-ups kind of thing, as opposed to mom and dad.
Yeah.
We have a book called, I want to say it's all about families, that has a nice little walkthrough of like, this person has 2 dads. This person only lives with their grandparents. This person lives, you know, and it like kind of like, these people live in an apartment. These people live in a house. These people don't have a home right now. You know, that kind of thing. So, but the Plenty of Hugs one was, I feel like a lot of these will end up being teaching, right? Like lessons, but like nonfiction, as opposed to like a fictional lesson that it'll teach you, but it's a fictional story.
Yeah.
But the Plenty of Hugs one was just like literally a day in this little girl's life. And it was so cute. It was so sweet. And I was like, it's just what we need. Like, just more. It wasn't like, and see, she has 2 moms. You know, it was like, just, these are her parents and her grownups. And then these are, you know, this was her life. And she did this today and she got to have this. And it was a little like, I think the way it described it on the back was like, it was like a love poem from the parents to the kid, is what it read as. Aww. So like, I think anybody reading it would feel like warm inside.
Yeah.
Like, that's how your parents feel about you. Oh yeah. And but it was just like about a non-heterosexual couple, and like, great, you know. So I feel like we need more that are not just like, let me teach you about anti-racism, let me teach you about you know, like the civil rights movement in a very specific manner. Like, just tell a story from that time. Like, there are books like that now, which is great. Or like, just, you know, have a Black family in a book, like a book that you would have written otherwise with an animal instead, you know?
Yeah. I know that there's one that my mom read a lot. She was an art teacher, but she also did a lot of, she would read aloud to the kids, or she would have like, she was often reading chapter books to her middle schoolers. And I know there's one, it's A Family Goes Down to Georgia, I think is the title.
Okay.
But they end up being, I think they end up being in Georgia when the church is bombed, when the 4 little girls are bombed. I found it.
Did you find it?
Yes.
Ooh, I'm impressed.
The Watsons Go to Birmingham.
I don't think
1963.
Oh, wow. It's from 1963.
It was published in 1995, but it's like 1963 is in the title. It's a Caldecott winner, I think. When the Watson family, 10-year-old Kenny, mom, dad, and little sister Joetta, and brother Byron sets out on a trip south to visit grandma in Birmingham, Alabama, they don't realize that they're headed towards one of the darkest moments in America's history. The journey reminds us that even in the hardest times, laughter and family can help get us through anything. So that was something she read every year
Yeah,
to
wow.
her students. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it was rare, right, to find a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I mean, I grew up in a pretty white suburban school, so maybe other places had teachers who tried to expand kids' mind about other hardships people were going through, but I don't know. Yeah.
All right. What's in your pile?
So, okay. So, I mean, this is just a small sampling I grabbed from the library before this podcast. I just returned like literally 40 books that were overdue. Not kidding.
Ooh.
There's anything from right now this thing called Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. There's one for Rebel Boys, to 100 Immigrant Women Who Changed the World. So it's like like I'll show you, but like one page, like this is it on the person.
Yeah.
So one page, like little snippets about their life, but it's pure nonfiction, right? It's like born in blah, blah, blah. And, this is what they did for the world. But, Lupita's in here. Love her. When We Are Kind, it comes out in more than one language. And then this one is by someone who speaks Cree. So it's also in Cree.
Oh, how cool.
Which is really, sorry. I think it's Dine or Dine. I'm not sure if it's Dine or Dine. That's the language that Cree people speak.
Okay.
But so, yeah, this is one of the ones that I made sure like that an Indigenous person had written and that not like I'm paying for this, I guess. So, but still, that it's requested from the library. It's nice to know. So this is something like, I'm kind when I only take from the earth what I need. And then, picture. And then I'm kind when I take care of myself and get a good night's sleep. It's not like a story. It's
mantras or
kind of like that. And like little kids like to read that kind of thing, as opposed to maybe my it's a little young for my kid, I would say, probably, who's now into like super action stuff. This one called Rainbow Boy, where like kids are kind of making fun of him for not liking a specific boy color, that kind of thing. Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, which is about a little girl that notices her eyes are different than her friends. So like this is one of the ones that I feel like is super important, is great. And it is, I feel like, what has come out more than like the just representation, right? This is like a little bit of a lesson for kids who would never think about their eyes because they look like, quote, everybody else's, or like that kind of thing. So it's just like, they're beautifully illustrated and just always have something interesting to say in them about, I feel like a lot of books like this use really great similes and metaphors to like get kids to understand and to also like have it be kind of poetic and not just, and more interesting, right? Like my eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea are a revolution, is what she says on it. And then Away with Wild Things I've got here, which is this one I actually haven't even read yet. Is it a real story? But this one actually might just be I got because the main character is not a white boy, which I like to do a lot. She's a brown skinned girl that like it just is talking about how she likes plants basically, and like it's a fun story about her way with wild things kind of thing. So it's like not a lesson of any form. And then then of course I've got like the ABCs of Black history.
Yep.
Which I'm hoping to drag my kid to read, because it's like, ABC's stories are quote a little younger, but this is not meant to be younger in that. I'm trying to remember what, there was one that I was like, oh, okay, this is not for little kids. Like J is for Juneteenth.
Xenophobia.
Basically, I'm trying to find what, it's gonna drive me crazy that X is for Malcolm X, actually.
Oh,
apparently.
nice.
Yeah. T is for Tuskegee.
Wow.
Which they don't fully.
Do they talk about Tuskegee Airmen, or do they talk about the
all black school? So it's not about, which my kid's old enough to kind of hear about it, but P is for power. And I find other parents on groups doing this, which I really dislike, of like, well, I shouldn't make my kid feel guilty for being white, right? Because they can't help it. And I'm like, what? Nobody's said to do that. Right. Nobody's saying they are taking responsibility for that. They just you have to help them understand why our white skin could make people feel uncomfortable, or like what privileges it gives us. And like, nobody's saying if he feels guilty, okay, like okay, like I do. So like guilt isn't a bad feeling when it's that you feel the feeling is that you feel bad that you have privileges that others don't. Like, why is that a bad feeling for someone to have?
Right.
That's okay. That's like empathy. That's okay.
Right.
Like that is something you want to teach your kid, to like want to uplift other people. Like maybe help them uplift other people. Then they won't focus on the I feel bad about myself, because they're not doing anything to help anybody else. If they were doing something to help anybody else, they might not feel as bad.
Right.
A whole nother thing. But diaspora was the one I was looking for in this ABCs of Black history. They say diaspora, which I feel like,
oh wow,
a lot of people don't like focus on that word ever.
Yeah.
So like, and then this sugar in milk one, so I don't butcher it, because I mentioned it earlier, is it's a Persian story, Persian legend. I said Indian. And it's because it's a Persian, the Persian people who arrive on the shores of India. Okay. So they get taken in by, which is, I remembered India being in the story, which is why I literally skimmed this at the library and was like, oh, I'd love this. I'm going to take it home and read it. And I hadn't read it yet fully. But yeah, it's this beautiful story about this little girl who feels alone because she's came in the country by herself. She doesn't have her parents. She's living with her aunt and her uncle. And then she's thinking back about this. Her aunt tells her the story about the Persian people who leave, find new land that they can call their own. And there's an Indian king who says our land's too crowded. Like, I don't want these people who speak another language. Like, I don't want to deal with them. And then, so he tries to explain it to them when they arrive on the shore by pouring milk into a glass and being like, see, it's full. We can't take anymore. And someone like one of the Persian people takes a spoonful of sugar and very carefully mixes it into the milk and is like, basically like, we will live with you in peace and make the world sweeter and fit here. And then the king is like, yes, of course, come in. And then, so it's kind of like, then from then on, she sees, they don't say if it's America or like England or wherever. It seems like a English speaking country, but like that. Oh, she does say America. So like that nothing really changed, but she feels like maybe she could fit in here eventually and like actually learn to have friends. And so it's a nice little moment for maybe like a refugee kid to see this book, like representing them. I feel like there's been a lot of refugee children books recently.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also important to explain to my kid that some people are here not because they wanted to quote come to America for a better place, but because they had nowhere else to go, and this was the only safe place they could come. Right. So I mean, safe quotes.
Right.
Safer than the place they were fleeing.
Safer option. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like, that's, I mean, and I do sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm picking a lot of like real heavy books to discuss, but I make sure I read these kind of things with him to to explain anything that I feel like he probably doesn't understand, but he might ask about it if we weren't reading them together.
Right.
You need the parents to kind of be involved with a lot of these too.
Right. Yeah.
Which, some people are and some people aren't. But I love, one of the things I love the most, and I was like, I don't know if this is a thing you can talk about, is probably not. It's not a thing. I love recommending things to people, whether it's restaurants or, books. So that's why I figured I'd do that Instagram, because I already do that with my friends and with my friends' kids. And I'm like, hey, there's this book, like, oh, my kid loves, my like 7-year-old girl. I'm looking for something else for her. We've read a lot of stuff. Like she wants like we want a light chapter book for her or whatever. And I'm like, hey, have you heard of Zoe and Sassafras? And they're like, oh no, So I feel like the more I read, right, like the more I'll be able to have a space to recommend to people.
Yeah.
My problem is always like, I don't know if it's my ADHD brain or like it's just a completist brain. I'm like, but I have to read all the books to know what to recommend.
Make a good recommendation.
Exactly.
Right.
That's how I search for restaurants, right? And I'm like, I have looked up every Yelp review and I'm sure that this one will be the best restaurant for tonight.
I have traveled with friends like you.
I try not to put that on my friends though. I usually just tell it to my husband and then I'll be like, oh, hey guys, you want to go to blah, blah, blah. And then like, God forbid someone doesn't like it. I would like, after we left, I'm like, are you sure they liked it? I don't know. It was bad, right? It shouldn't be bad.
Oh, no, I had a friend I went to Barcelona with and we went to Bib restaurants, which is like, before you get your Michelin star, you're a Bib restaurant.
Oh,
so she found like all the Bib restaurants. So we went to a couple of those. But then sometimes I was like, can't we just stand on this plaza and look with our eyeballs and pick a place?
No.
Without looking at our phones?
No, because then how would you know? What if you miss out on that one restaurant that's like the best? You wouldn't have known.
I do not care.
I know. I'm trying to be more chill about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think those are great people to travel with because they think I'm frustrating because like I don't have an opinion. I'm like, it'll be good. All these places will be fine.
Yeah.
Like
I trust you.
I'll trust you. Like I would be perfectly content going on an international vacation and going to the same 2 restaurants every day for a week to feel like a regular at the end of the vacation more than to feel like I have gotten like the best meal of the trip.
I do struggle with that for sure because I crave that. Like I want to go to the same place. I want to be a regular. I want to have my order. And then also like, I need to experience everything. Like when we went to Chicago back in 2012 and we ate at one place twice. But other than that, we were there for 3 or 4 days. We had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then usually like almost like a second lunch so I could try to squeeze in some other places. Like there's so many places, especially in cities when you go that you go to places forever. And like there were a couple times I was like, oh, I wish we could go back to, the Girl and the Goat, and I don't even know if that place still exists.
It very much still. I mean, the good thing about the Girl and the Goat is you can't casually just return the next day. Like that choice is not.
We
available.
went like real early. I feel like Stephanie had just won Top Chef and like just opened it not that long before we went. So I feel like I barely need to make I needed to make reservations, or maybe it was like a 2-hour. It might have been like a 2-hour wait or something, but it wasn't like crazy.
Well, Jess, this has been a blast. I know it's getting late for you.
I know. Sorry. And keep up your whole Friday night.
I mean, this is my Friday night. This is it. It's still.
I may watch Loki.
Pandemic.
The one thing I have watched more than one episode of in a year and a half. I think we've watched like one episode of so many shows and not a single other one. Like Nick wanted to show me Sopranos because I had never seen it. We watched first episode. We had watched Avatar beforehand. We watched like 2 episodes. We watched like 3 of Steven Universe. We never finished it yet. Like, it's just can't watch anything.
Yeah.
We're in episode 5 of Loki. So at least we've done something.
And I think it's only like 6 or 8 episodes. So
yay, I might finish something.
You might finish it. Yeah. So Jess, where can people find you and your recommendations on the internet?
Yeah. So unfortunately, someone else stole the name I really wanted, but it is reading _ with _E on Instagram and TikTok, though Leah and I are kind of discussing. I don't know how to use it because I'm old, apparently. I hope to get more on there, but I have learned I really wanted to do reading. I'd love to read kids' books out loud. And I didn't even think about it, but I Googled it, thank God, beforehand, because everybody and their mother has like a YouTube channel and reads it out loud. It's illegal.
Right.
Like,
because it's copyright material.
It's copyright infringement. And I was like, oh my God, like, I thank God I didn't do it. And of course I just want to like send people to buy these books, not hear me read them. I just like reading them for funsies. So yeah, so you won't hear me reading any of the books. I will have pictures and reviews, and maybe I'll flip through a book and be like, here's what I like about it, or read a page or two, but I'm not going to like read the whole book to your kid because it is illegal, and you can find them on the internet, but I do not feel comfortable taking that from the authors. Yeah. Well, in that way. Yes. Yeah.
Great. And what is the podcast that you and Nick did together?
Yeah. It's called How Have You Never? I think it's ! I believe, but it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, like podcasts, whatever, like everywhere you can find it. Because we haven't put out an episode in a little bit, it's possibly buried under other people who have named it similar stuff. But it is, yeah, it's How Have You Never? And actually, we may try to come back. We were talking about trying to come back. So
awesome.
We'll see. Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been a blast. I will see you on the Discord.
Yes. And hopefully in my neck of the woods in February.
In February, yes.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.